I think probably one of the funniest things that I've seen in one of these weeks where decades are continuing to happen is every Western government simultaneously scrambling to remove HTS from all of their prescribed terror list watch lists before like the prime minister ends up getting questioned by like special branch.
It's fine. Jelani has been reading Adam Tooze's Substack. He's a nice man now. All right. So like we're gonna build institutions. You know what he is, right? We're gonna do moderate, pragmatic jihad through the institutions. And you know what that makes him? That makes him Islamism's first Fabian.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought you were going to say he's jihadi Jerry Adams.
Yeah.
Embracing the political process.
Yeah.
Really funny to be like, Ahmed al-Sharaa has always denied being a member of Al-Qaeda or of ISIS. I'll say this, right? In as you say, one of the weeks where decades happen, we've seen the defeat and like exile and shame of a hateful tyrant responsible for countless abuses and crimes against humanity. He is, of course, not going to be punished, but is going to be exiled, which is something. And we're in a kind of propitious moment where, you know, the next thing may be worse. It may be, you know, power may be delivered entirely into the hands of extremists. I refer, of course, here to the election in the United States of America.
Wait, so what was January 6th? Were the jet ski guys who like wandered around the Capitol building, were they the moderate rebels?
the Free American Army, yeah.
Yeah, the Free American Army has spent 7 years making gains around the outskirts of Baltimore before whoever was propping up the Biden regime just decided that they weren't interested in doing it anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth having the warm water poured on Long Island, and so they're just like, fuck it.
Biden had positioned himself for many years as the kind of like protector, but also guarantor of superiority of America's Delawarean minority, which, you know, there's a lot of kind of theological implications there about whether Delawareans are really Americans because, you know, they observe slightly different rituals. And I think this is the kind of tendency to flatten it into a religious thing when actually Delaware is like largely a series of like complex clan allegiances.
Yeah. Well, as they call them, shell companies.
Well, it's as you say, Milo, right? Delaware is a Shia state in a mostly Sunni country. And like that was also by design, right? Like when the imperialists wanted to make the U.S. easier to rule.
Are you suggesting that like Delaware is a kind of Sykes-Picot creation?
Yeah. Sykes and Picot were drawing the lines in the Middle East. Sykes bashed a symbol behind Picot's head, and then his pen slipped, and he drew Delaware.
Here's an idea for you, Lawrence of Delaware.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, and so it's what I think is really interesting. Everyone's like, oh, you know, no, Delaware's not the only Shia state. It's like, you know, Rhode Island is a Shia state too, and it's like that's in a Smiley state. Like it's a different thing.
Yeah, we follow the fourth caliph.
Yeah. we fuck with the Aga Khan here of Rhode Island.
Do we think this bit maybe has like grown slightly out of control?
Oh, no. Although it is to me funny that Assad's gonna have to go like live beside Steven Seagal, Gerard Depardieu, and Jan Marsalek now.
Nightmare blunt rotation.
What a poker night though. Seagal. Maybe I can help you take Syria back.
Well, the thing is, Seagal's going to speak to Assad for 10 minutes and then start speaking with what he imagines a Syrian accent to be.
So you're saying Seagal's going to be like the kind of guy who goes to LSE in 2010, basically.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to start calling himself the Lion of Damascus by the transitive property.
Yes. Anyway, hello, welcome to TF reporting from one of those weeks where decades is happening.
Yeah. This week, I guess it's the 2000s as we're toppling Middle East dictators.
Yeah, I've been feeling a bit giddy actually because I've been having to like spend a lot of time on Twitter acting like I know what I'm talking about. You know, I've been getting into discourse, and so that's been, you know, it's been refreshing, you know, and so I'm ready to record a good comedy show.
Yeah, it's all the 2000s again. And guess what? It's 2008 because one of the things we're going to talk about in a moment is the embattled Labour Party's plan to fix British capitalism before they're swept aside by a coalition of two opposing parties, including the Conservatives. You'll never guess who the coalition partner is probably going to be. But before we do that, I did want to sometimes you see a story and and you just decide it's just going to go in. I don't care about the theming. I don't care about what else we're going to talk about. It's just
Does it have
in.
a dude with a funny name in it?
Yes, it has a dude with a funny name in it, but you're never going to guess what the name is. You know what else? It feels like something from the 2000s. It really does.
Oh, okay. A little nostalgia trip.
Number one, this is all from a story in 404 Media. Jason Keebler, the editor of 404 Media, has been a guest on this show a few times. It's a great resource. I use it a lot.
You like Jason?
Yeah, I use it a lot for like background research and stuff, but sometimes they just do a story so good I want to talk about it directly. This is about DigitalOcean, which is a data company. They had an all-hands meeting, which 404 Media then got the recording of, because this was an all-hands meeting that happened pretty much right before the CEO, Yancey Sproul, quit like immediately after.
Okay, sorry. Right.
Well, he had all that money from the dice game.
Yeah, of course.
Just naming your child Yancey.
Yes.
You know, like this is looking at your newborn infant and being like, this really looks like a Yancey to me.
To Mr. and Mrs. Sproul, a son, Yancey.
You've got to have a compelling reason to go that far back in the name book alphabetically as well. And like once you're at Y, you're like really almost out of ideas. That's a kind of last minute panic name.
You're really concerned. Yeah. It was either that or Zoolander.
Yeah. It's either
Zoolander, Zebedee, Zechariah. Yeah. After that, you're you're into the dregs.
Zampino. It's more of a last name.
I could have been called Zamboni. I got lucky.
I've named my child Zelensky after the president of Ukraine.
Yeah, there you go.
This isn't so much about an evil tech company as much as it's about like a case of LinkedIn brain coming to life.
You're telling me that Yancey Sproul has LinkedIn brain?
You can. How about this? You can be the judge.
Okay.
I would put forward that recording all of your meetings is Nixon brain.
Yes. Well, so also, by the way, listeners, if you've heard this already, please do not shout out your phones and ruin it for Milo and Nova.
Just a bunch of people like shouting at their phones on like crowded tube trains on their way into work.
Oh, it's Yancey Sproul. I know what happened to him.
Police are searching for answers today as a series of commuters began like chanting strange names.
Yeah, it's
putting both hands up for the teacher, frantically grabbing at your elbow, like, please me, miss, I know.
We just don't know who this Greg Stubbe might be.
Greg Stubbe, last seen with accomplice Yancey Sproul.
Oh, the Stubbe Sproul scam.
Gave it the old 1-2, the Stubbe Sproul. So, at an all-hands meeting at DigitalOcean in July 2023, the CEO intended to address an incident in which an employee at a Pakistani company that DigitalOcean had just acquired called Cloudways posted #say no to LGBT, #proud to be Muslim on LinkedIn, and then crossed out the DigitalOcean logo that had been turned rainbow for Pride Month.
Okay, sure. We just have a homophobic affiliate now.
Yes, we have a homophobic affiliate.
And meanwhile, their Delaware delegation were like, those guys aren't Muslims.
Yeah. The employee was not fired, but left the company of his own accord several months later. Here is now Yancey Sproul addressing this controversy, trying to bring peace back to DigitalOcean with a relatable story from his life.
They always say that this Yancey Sproul is a peacemaker, you know? If I'm not capable of building this bridge, my name's not Yancey Sproul.
No, Yancey Sproul was actually deployed to Damascus in 2011 to try to broker a peace between the Free Syrian Army. Yeah, now he's in Turkey being like, fucking go crazy. Anyway, every time we leave our home, we have to bend our belief system because we engage with human beings who are different than us in a number of dimensions.
Oh, he's doing rally to restore sanity stuff.
Sproul, who is he's a black American, tells an anecdote from his time working at Corning in the 1980s. Quote, I worked in the electrical engineering controls engineering group at this manufacturing plant in Wilmington, North Carolina, and not everyone liked that they were integrating Corning. And then there was a particular person who I got off to a rough start with who'd been at the company for 40 years. And our manager saw this and talked to him, and he actually turned a corner and became a mentor of mine. I had a great relationship with him. He never invited me to lunch, never invited me to have a drink, never invited me to play golf, even though we both loved golf. I came to find out that this person was a member of the KKK, and it was a very powerful message in learning for me that when we sign up for the values of a company, because we believe in that opportunity, and we can bend as long as we don't break our personal beliefs, and we can work very well together.
Just like, I could work with a Klansman, just unprompted as a way of like papering over the cracks here.
Yeah. Yeah, the guy leads a very compartmentalized life. Like, I don't bring the KKK shit into the office, you know?
Yeah.
I leave that's in my high days and holidays.
It's about work-terrorist group balance, you know?
Yeah.
A lesson which HTS are currently learning as they occupy Syrian government ministries.
God, do you think they're gonna? I wonder if they're gonna be HTS guys who are just like, fuck, I just hate doing Excel. I hate doing.
Yes,
like the Taliban.
Yeah, exactly. There were Taliban guys like that, and the thing is, because like HTS's current like vibe is, we're gonna do like pragmatism, right? We're gonna be like all things to all people. There's a necessary component of that, which is you're gonna have to have like shopping malls and concerts and stuff because most Syrians aren't Islamists, right? And so if you think about the like Americans and Brits who are in Syria right now, I'm talking about Syria again. Sorry, I could do this for an hour and a half. If you think about the like Westerners who are in Syria right now, the boots on the ground who are trying to like, you know, secure people's sarin gas stockpiles and hammer this into some kind of like Western friendly government. The second wave, the first pair of loafers on the ground will be the guys who build them the malls, the guys with the expensive European glasses who try and convince them, like pitch them on Syrian neon.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Just like, okay, you might not want to work with the Kurds, but I learned a lesson a long time ago at this like electrical engineering plant in North Carolina that you don't have to be best friends.
Yeah,
the Peshmerga is something I do in my spare time.
Yeah.
And when I'm here at the HTS offices, I don't bring that energy into
not
the...
loving that we chose the Peshmerga to compare to the Klan.
Yeah, very different ideologies, let's be clear.
Strongly anti-Kurd position.
Yeah, well, that's what the KKK stands for. Kurds.
I think what happened, Milo, is that's the first non-state actor military operating in the region you could think of, right?
Yeah.
The fucking movie Turk Klansman.
Yeah, there you go. There's an idea.
It's still got Adam Driver in it, though.
Yeah, taking it away from you at the last minute. I like the idea of someone who joined HTS thinking it was a K-pop band and is slightly relieved that they're not doing like combat anymore, but is also not particularly pleased about the spreadsheet.
Well, of course, I could never support HTS as an AGP, you know?
It's going to be probably like 4, maybe 7 days before you can legally support HTS. Anyway, look, I think maybe we could say, if not the Peshmerga, perhaps ISIS. Perhaps it's
Well, because ISIS is still around, so like functionally, like Jelani is doing the like, well, yeah, I work with the ISIS guys a bit, but like, you know, they never really spoke about the ISIS stuff to me, you know, like, and that's in the past, you know, but we learned a lesson from it.
We both loved golf, firstly. Yeah. But look, we don't play golf in Corning.
Yeah, it's like, well, listen, we both love jihad, right? But we don't take that to the office because what we're interested in is like, you know, trash collection in Aleppo.
We're interested in getting those loafer guys here to tell us what kind of like an artificial moon they can build us.
I'm really struck by the first pair of loafers on the ground, or like loafers on the ground to indicate like Western like parasitic like reconstruction.
Quarter zips deployed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one employee said, "Perhaps I misunderstood what I've heard, but is management using an example of the KKK as something that would still be acceptable for an employee to participate in, so long as they don't connect that with the company?" Several employees, including some who are Muslim and queer, pointed out that the implication that Muslim employees would inherently not support LGBTQ employees is also itself bigoted. Like,
they're not. Listen, maybe Yancey Sproul isn't the best diplomat in the game. Yeah. All right, but he tries. All right,
he goes for it. Does Yancey Sproul?
That's they often say that of Yancey.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, he's adhering to the main tenet of like management philosophy, which is he's not asking them to do anything he's not prepared to do himself. And to be fair, if he is a black American is saying he would work with a guy who's in the KKK, you can't ask much more of him in terms of commitment to the company.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, it won't surprise you to know that Sproul left DigitalOcean and is now working at a private equity firm. Sproul, when asked by 404 Media for comment, said he did subsequently apologize for his remarks. So
I just love the idea of saying like, yeah, you know, I'd work with a Klansman, and immediately being headhunted by a private equity firm who like presumably heard that and were like, let's fucking go.
Oh yeah,
let's put that to the test.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Yancey. Would you work
being headhunted by the radio host guy from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah. Passive aggressive job offer is very funny.
Owning the libs by offering them a job.
Yeah. It's Yancey Spruill. So I do hope we'll hear more from him again. However, I think he's just going to be quietly making money at a private equity firm from now on and not giving any more speeches. Although if he gives you more speeches.
And the diversity of beliefs at that private equity firm, extreme, let's say, in one direction.
Yeah. Speaking of a diversity of beliefs extreme in one direction, why don't we talk about Keir Starmer and his band of moderate rebels who have taken over.
I was going to frame him as Assad and be like, man, it's a bad week for dictators all over, right? Because he did kind of have a couple of things in common with Assad, namely spending a lot of time in London in a kind of professional organization. Assad was an ophthalmologist, Starmer was a barrister. About the same time, too.
Can't make it any more obvious.
Being an obvious pussy and, crucially, winning an election by Assad margins and then having power crumble out from under him anyway.
Yeah, look, 2024 was just a bad year for incumbents, all right?
Ann Seltzer says that Bashar al-Assad can still win.
He's electable if you vote for him, which, by the way, you must.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, a lot of the guys in HTS just really feel that, the prices of eggs, petrol, and milk haven't come down.
You joke, but that's like a huge part of what happened in 2010.
Yes, that was set off the Arab Spring.
Yeah, that was like all that happened.
Bidenflation caused one Tunisia.
Bidenflation and also the corrupt bureaucracy reached back in time, and then Mohammed Bouazizi's vegetable cart ended up getting overturned by a policewoman because he wouldn't pay the bribe. And people forget it was a policewoman. Well,
interesting.
Yeah. Well, it was because Assad went too woke. That's what the problem was.
I mean, that was Ben Ali, but yes. Any case, there's a lot of worthwhile economics work that's been done that's basically said that the large inflationary waves that have been going around the world in food prices since the end of the financial crisis, and especially the sort of ratcheting up of asset prices, just basically kind of caused the Arab Spring. That's what that was.
Oh well, I'm sure that any of the future ones will just result in more peace and stability.
Oh yeah, the next time it's going to be the moderate rebels for sure, 100%.
Times person of the year, the moderate rebel.
God, I remember that. God,
Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
The moderate rebel.
So anyway, interestingly, I'm concerned that the even more moderate rebels that are associated with Hayat al-McSweeney have begun to make ground in the areas between Liverpool and all the way down to Birmingham, in fact. And the embattled premiers.
Jabhat al-Aqas.
Okay, there we go.
We have encircled Stoke-on-Trent. Yeah. Your days are numbered.
Yeah.
Warrington is already in our hands.
Yeah.
Surrender now.
Yeah. Basically, labor figures, this is talking to, I believe, The Guardian. Labor figures from a broad range of faction, from Tony Blair era veterans, Starmer allies, and other lawmakers on the left of the party say that the mood is low, and Labor MPs talked to by Bloomberg say they were surprised by how poorly Starmer and Reeves were performing, questioned whether they even had a plan for power or a way to communicate it, and some have begun to loudly speculate after a bumpy landing of Starmer's relaunch speech last week that Starmer and Reeves...
Which relaunch was this?
Oh, this is the relaunch that wasn't a relaunch.
Okay, sure. I mean, let me just put a marker down now. I mean, obviously, this couldn't happen to a nicer set of people. And obviously, setting up this kind of coterie of backstabbing freaks around them will lead to some backstabbing, and already has. I will put down the marker now. Starmer will not last 5 years until the next election, or 4 years, or however long it is. It will be some other Labour freak show, but it will not be Keir Starmer.
Sorry, the doorbell has just rung twice. I need to go open it.
Oh, it's the postman.
This late?
Yeah.
No, this is it's like Assad's security forces, We're being taken out one by one,
Yeah, who must go? Assad is already retrained as an every delivery person.
They could always go back to the ophthalmology, You're just oh Christ.
Yeah.
Just the real question, right, to look at governance in Syria after the fall of Assad. Better or worse? Better or worse?
Can you read the top line for me? HTS?
Labour needs someone who's used to government, who's able to deal with lots of...
Your Labour Party candidate in Darlington.
And just straight into the House of Lords, Lord Assad of Aleppo.
this hardworking former NHS doctor.
Yeah. He's gonna be ophthalmology Tsar.
Well, this is the thing. It's like Jonathan Ashworth, right? Even when you get rid of these guys, you never really get rid of them. So this he's gonna be on like Syrian TV for like, the next 2 years.
Yeah. They start having balance requirements for some reason.
Well, yeah, because of Jelani having read a bunch of like lib stuff. He's like, we have to have a Syrian BBC and all that entails. Not thrilled about the Syrian Jimmy Savile. We've got to have him.
We're gonna have 2 Syrian equivalents of the movie Scoop. two Syrian movies about the Prince Andrew interview.
We're gonna have to review those as well.
I'm afraid we're gonna have to review the Syrian Prince Andrew
Syrian
movies.
Ruth Wilson doing that voice.
Yeah.
She said she's putting a more of a Lebanese accent. She's not pronouncing her Q's.
I've got to interview the Hashemite king. Apparently he's been nonsense. It's like Jimmy Al Savile all over again, and his catchphrase yalla yalla yalla.
Well, go check out the, I believe, bonus episode where we reviewed Scoop with Hessa, if you want to get that. Anyway, it's basically, as you're saying, November, it is being not just mooted by you, but mooted by other labor insiders that,
not just by me, a powerless dickhead, but like by actual like backstabbers.
Yes, Starmer and Reeves.
Qualified backstabbers.
Starmer and Reeves not going to survive to the next election.
Raising hand, has Peter Mandelson been given his like important sinecure yet? Because I know he was lobbying for like ambassador to the US, and then nothing really seemed to happen with that. And I feel that this is a very buttery flight of stairs that's being presented here.
I mean, I think this is, everybody is agreeing right now. And everyone's agreeing this right now, by the way, because, and we talked about this when we talked about the farmer protests. What Keir Starmer has been trying to do is what every British politician has been trying to do for quite a while. Again, like so many things in this country, you can start at different dates. You can start it after the financial crisis. You could start it after like the sort of Cameron Osborne coalition modernizing Tories fail to like fix British capitalism. You could start it in 2001 when the political system largely collapses. You can start it in you can start it with like Thatcherism, right? Like sort of resetting British capitalism in a way that you can't do twice, right? Like you enough adrenaline to keep you going.
It's so funny about the farmers though that like after years of attempts, decades of attempts to like find an issue that cuts through. And for once they do, and it's not me, which I'm very grateful for. I'm glad that it's not trans stuff. What it is Keir Starmer is doing white genocide against Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah, that's funny.
The thing that gets people very animated. And I like, that's very funny to me.
Keir Starmer kills farmers. Yeah. There you go. It's all there for the taking.
He's doing like Rhodesian, like sort of post-Rhodesian early Zimbabwe, like displacement of Jeremy Clarkson,
Wait, fuck no, that's what Assad should do now that he's left power. He should do the Syrian version of Clarkson's farm. Like Assad's oasis.
We're gonna see him on like the big fat Christmas quiz of the year or whatever, and you're just gonna be like, okay, listen, I know he's in the news a lot, but like, is he funny though?
Yeah. Keir Starmer's mission, like all of these other prime ministers before him, has been, you have to fix British capitalism because we're not like increasing productivity, we're not increasing returns, and people aren't bought into British capitalism, and you have to fix it. But the complication is you can't change anything. You can't really reform it. It was reformed once by Margaret Thatcher and Nigel Lawson, and it can never be really reformed again. You have to make this reformation work.
Yeah, you can't even reform it in a Thatcherite direction, which is what Liz Truss tried to do, because it's like now so unsteady that it won't bear the attempt anymore.
Yeah, well, it's essentially giving someone a shot of adrenaline, but it's more like stabbing them basically with a syringe. Yeah, because also like that. Like so many things, like there's you can only do so much Thatcherism until you run out of the state's money. There wasn't really anything left for Liz Truss to back up what she wanted to do. And so what happens, and I think is really interesting is a bit of a stretch, but what I think is remarkable is that when Keir Starmer, the long Starmer of it all, has been like starting as basically continuity Corbyn, which we always knew was a lie, and turned out to be a lie, whatever, right? And then slowly, as he gets closer to power, becoming more and more like an old Labour right guy. die. Fine, that was always the plan. Like the whole point was like to make sure Morgan McSweeney like the whole thing is a blade of armor around Morgan McSweeney's fake job. Fine. But as he gets into power, then he begins with a set of plans. He runs in a manifesto that is, insufficient, poorly targeted, but, meaningfully distinct from what the conservatives were going to do in a couple of ways. Not saying better, just different. He had a slightly different plan.
Yeah, sure.
Things like fake nationalizations. These are things like massively turning up the amount of money that he wants to use to de-risk investment. I mean, it's almost a little bit like Johnsonian in some ways. But regardless, right, this is what he does. The longer he spends in power, and he hasn't spent very long in power, the more he has to relaunch what he's doing. And the more it just begins looking like Theresa May's campaign.
Yeah, how many different relaunches have we had now, and what forms have they taken? Because we started out with like missions, and then we had pledges, and now we have plans. Is that right?
No, sorry. Yes, that's easy mistake. No, we had pledges. Those were lies.
Okay.
Then we had mission-driven government, and then the missions were hard. And so we've changed the mission. Cool. So the missions to have milestones, and the link between the missions and the milestones is the 3 foundations.
Okay. I see. Yeah, I'm getting it. I think the best way to understand this is that Keir Starmer's not so much relaunching as he's doing what Hollywood does, and he's making multiple versions of the same movie in the same year. Like, we've had Olympus Has Fallen, and now we're getting White House Down. Yeah. And you're like, this seems suspiciously similar to what we had before.
So what I'm getting here is, that image of like the Christian Trinity that's like God is the Father, is the Son, is not, in a triangle. The missions aren't the pledges, but the pledges are the sum of the like missions and the
milestones. So we have the
milestones. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, we forgot about the milestones.
The milestones have a number of first steps associated with them that will help deliver the missions, which will support the foundation. I think that's what it is.
We're supporting the foundations.
Yes.
Where are the pledges?
So the missions are below the foundations, just to be clear.
So the pledges have all been lies.
Looking at the foundations and being like, fit some cowboys in through it.
Yeah. Well, indeed.
Well, the problem you've got is your foundations are at the top. That's what's happening there. You see, they're being supported by these relatively flimsy missions and milestones. Well, I mean, look, honestly, I wouldn't put these missions or milestones in the structure at all. But in any case, they would certainly go on top of your foundations, which traditionally do go in the ground. Yeah, so Ed Miliband understood that. He had an obelisk.
So that's the thing. Like the Ed Stone, the missions, the milestones, all of that. It's just imitating the Tony Blair pledge card, which worked one time in 1997.
Yeah, and then even Tony Blair took the card idea one step too far. They say you do cards twice in this game, once on the way up.
They are going to try to do ID cards around.
Of course they fucking are. Yeah, okay. They've never been trying.
So they're trying to do ID cards for proving your age at like pubs, and then that's their thin end of the wedge. But nevertheless, right. So the foundations are national security, secure borders, and economic stability. Again, nobody has tried to do that before by then delivering economic growth, becoming a clean energy superpower, take back our streets, have opportunity.
Well, I mean, obviously, like you can knock out a couple of those pillars like instantaneously by doing the like Clarkson White genocide, right? Like he's like the one standing in the way of the like green energy transition and also probably like some national security stuff. So just knock that out in an afternoon.
So the milestones, he says, Starmer sets out 6 milestones designed to give the British people the power to hold our feet to the fire. They are
DJing, b-boying. We're gonna do this joke anytime there's a numbered series of things, and I'm never gonna get sick of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always gonna mix the two of them together, and it's always gonna be like my favorite thing that we do. Higher real household disposable income and GDP per capita by the end of the Parliament to make the UK the fastest growing G7 economy. So that milestone undercuts the previous mission. So number 1.
Yes.
Building 1.5 million homes in England and fast tracking planning decisions on infrastructure projects, putting the UK back on track to achieve 95% clean power by 2030. That's different from the mission. Meeting the NHS standard of 92% of patients in England waiting no longer than 18 weeks for elective care. Getting 75% of 5-year-olds ready to learn when they start school. And my favorite one, a named police officer for every beat.
I mean, that's going to be fun, right? Like, not just because everyone
As opposed
will
to
have...
fucking Agent 47 who does it now.
Yeah, the PC is the Void, who is our current nameless police officer. No,
fucking Daniel Craig and Layer Cake. PC XXXX.
If you knew my name, you'd be as clever as me. Yeah. No, what I think this is a boon for us specifically, because it means that the studio will have a named police officer that we can then make a kind of comic character in the show in the same vein as our accountant. So we can just anytime he drops by, you know, you can be like, oh, you know, that's PC so-and-so.
Yeah, it's PC Shufflesworth, of course.
Yeah, PC Shufflesworth. It's like a children's show, you know, like Ballamore.
The whole named police officer for every beat though thing is, again, like that's just the kind of thing that like Theresa May wanted to do. It's the kind of thing that Rishi Sunak wanted to do.
I'm also trying to think about how overworked that like particular named police officer will be. Like that's dangerously close to like the one person left who runs Britain, you know?
Ultimately, right. What we get back to over and over again when we look at the people trying to govern Britain is that the governance of this country is purely managerial, and it's managers largely talking to managers, and those managers, some of them manage contracts that are other organizations of managers with a couple of people who do things. And so I always think about like the moment where British capitalism got put on rails and the British state became unreformable was when, broadly speaking, state employees stopped being able to do things like manage a power plant or actually drive a train, right? Or fix a train track or all of these things or build something, right? We replaced a largely skilled state labor force with a state labor force instead that has one skill. And this isn't just like
which is as you say managing.
And that's not just civil servants, that's like elected politicians as well.
Exercise.
Yeah, it's one large E-tray exercise. And so of course the only solutions they can think of are managerial ones, which is we need to have more and different better targets. We need to make sure our goals are smart or whatever.
It's interesting too, because like in order to keep the lights on, both literally and metaphorically, we had to have like the smallest possible number of remaining like state employees who actually did things. And then we can tell that we hate it because we just like refer to them reflexively with this kind of contempt of like, oh, like, you know, frontline workers or like essential workers or whatever, whether that's like, you know, nurses or whatever. And it's like, no, the NHS isn't supposed to have nurses because it's a public body. Those nurses should, by rights, be employed by some like, you know, rent-seeking middleman, right? But, you know, the NHS should be an organization for procurement managers. Those are the real people.
Yeah, clap for procurement managers.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, this is what I see management gimmicks that are along in a series of largely like management gimmicks that if you can just tweak how the email is, basically, you can fix British capitalism. It is purely symbolism acting on symbolism.
Well, I'm pulling all of the levers on this control panel, and none of them really seem to be doing anything. So I might as well like pull them harder.
Well, indeed.
Yeah, I'm in the Fisher Price Playhouse, but it's the government.
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
How many man hours do you think are spent in Whitehall every year on typing the phrase "I hope this email finds you well"? just back and forward to each other.
If we want to talk about Whitehall for a moment, we talked also about like Starmer deciding to embark on his plan of basically KPIs to reform British capitalism without changing anything fundamental about it that's been about since 1980.
The joke about the big Kanban board on the outside of Downing Street looms closer to reality every day.
But in his mission to do that, he has again created only enemies, no allies. You know, if you, by the way, you want to talk about the farmers, my partner's parents are like, you know, small town, older conservative people. They were wearing support the farmers pins last time they were seen by someone of our generation. So
of course,
that's the issue that's cut through.
Yeah.
It's created a base.
But that's only because they love Assad.
Yeah, Assad seen in Somerset with a combine harvester.
What Starmer is choosing to do is, of course, declare another enemy, saying, quote, "Too many people in Whitehall are comfortable in the tepid bath of managed decline and have forgotten."
Gross. That's really nasty metaphor work there, kid.
Kid's sensual deep bath. Run yourself a nice, sensual, tepid bath of managed decline. Now, don't add too many suds, because they're going to be difficult to scrub off the bath afterwards. Just add a moderate amount. No candles, that's a fire hazard. And make sure to stick on something relaxing, but not too relaxing, like the shipping forecast.
Yeah. Make sure to enjoy some royalty-free massage music. So he says, too many have forgotten, to paraphrase JFK, that you choose change not because it's easy, but because it's hard. I get that when trust in politics is low.
JFK was talking about going to the fucking moon. You were talking about stopping people's nans from dying outside A&E on a 4-hour ambulance wait. Can you see the shrinking of ambitions here?
Someone just described to me a sensual bath and now I'm hard.
I get that when trust in politics is low, we must be careful at the promises we make. But across both Whitehall and Westminster, that's been internalized as, quote, don't say anything, don't try anything too ambitious, set targets that will happen anyway. And I mean, Mr. Set Targets that will...
We're going to do these like moonshots, and then the moonshots are like, kids know how to read at some point, probably.
Imagine getting slagged off by Keir Starmer for having a lack of ambition and being too comfortable with tepid solutions and managed decline. Like, how fucking tepid and unambitious do you have to be that Keir Starmer's like, oh, this guy's a bit wet, bit of a fucking wetter over in the civil service. So I'm going a bit Josh Widdicombe here. The civil service is full of wetters.
Just really enjoying the huge amount of government expenditure that went into building Keir Starmer that glass house.
We embrace the risk because if there was no jeopardy and no resistance, no blockages or impediments for us to remove, then sure as night follows day, that would be a sign that we're not serious about delivering real change. And of course, the blockages and impediments that he is wanting to remove are, it's not, let's just say this, it's not
we got to remove this blockage. We got to remove this blockage from this tepid bath. Why does no one find this inspiring speech writing?
It's a plug, Keir. It's a plug.
As JFK has said, what was this blockage and impediment doing in my tepid bath?
This has now set him against the civil service, with the head of the FDA union that represents 20,000 civil servants saying, quote, this is frankly insulting to those trying to deliver and lead our public services. Starmer, of course, immediately walked back his comments. But we can see a little bit of what
I like the tepid bath. Perhaps the bath could stand to be tepider.
When I said that it would be acceptable for someone in the KKK to work in the civil service, what I meant by that.
So what are some of the things he wants to do to try to, because like obviously, the government in the UK as usual is not going to deliver the milestones, the foundations, the missions, let alone the pledges.
Wait, what? But they've spent so much time setting those out. Surely they must be high up the priority list.
Well, so but things have to change. And of course, we found out exactly what Pat McFadden wants to do in order to change the civil service. He will pledge to make the state.
Oh, okay.
Just listen. Remember how we always said the state has to be like a business? The state has to be like a business. The problem was,
of course,
we were making the state
sell all its assets.
Well, we were making the state the wrong kind of business. We were making the state a business like a McDonald's franchise, an airline leasing company.
Yeah, businesses that make money and are consistently successful.
Yeah, but also, of course, that unlike a state, do like kind of one thing or one kind of category of thing and do so in order to make a profit, usually for investors. Pat McFadden has said, okay, well, that's not going to work. We have to decide what kind of business we want to run the state as. And he says, this is what we're going to do differently. We're going to run the state.
Okay. Maybe we're going to run it as a McDonald's franchise. Yeah. Everybody is now an employee. Some of you will learn to be qualified to use the grill.
Everybody's going to get the employee discount at McDonald's is up and down the country.
Just a kind of mandatory McDonald's badge with the little rank pips on there.
And our overlord will be a terrifying clown. King Charles is undergoing the surgery as we speak. Queen Camilla is going to be the Hamburglar.
And of course, Prince William has the hated grimace.
Sadiq Khan will remain Mayor McCheese.
God, we've got to keep Andrew away from grimace.
So, Pat McFadden will pledge to make the state, quote, more like a startup as he launches a £100 million fund.
Oh, Christ. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Move fast and break things.
Which startup, Pat McFadden? Which one specifically? Do you want to make it more like Juicero? Maybe WeWork, perhaps?
It's really funny to put the entire country on a move fast and break things footing, given that we already do one of those, but it's not the good one.
The British state is like a bag of juice, and the civil service are too weak to squeeze the juice from that bag, which is why I need to build an apparatus of some kind to squeeze the bag so that we may get at the juicy goodness within.
I mean, weirdly, this is the same thing as Elon Musk's bullshit Doge department, right? We're gonna turn the big efficiency switch on, and we're gonna be based in Epic.
The arc of history is long, but it bends towards Venice ruling the world.
Let me tell you what they're saying. They're saying, Pat McFadden is saying the government's going to encourage tech firm workers to join the civil service for 6 to 12 month tours of duty to work on the national missions.
Would you like to do a kind of national service conscription term in the tepid bath?
Yeah.
Oh, won't you join me in the tepid bath of the civil service?
I did 4 tours of death for you. Can't fucking say shit to me. You weren't there, man. When we reformed agricultural regulations.
This is a little bit, I think, right? So number one, Pat McFadden has looked at the U.S. And by the way, he has had good things to say about Elon and what like Doge is doing. It's like,
of course he has.
Do you think Pat McFadden knows who the fuck David Sachs is, right? He just says, he doesn't know who David Sachs is. He just says, they've made one of the early investors in Facebook in charge of like one of the technology departments. He doesn't see that, they've made one of the guys from the All In podcast in charge of making sure that the government pumps the crypto bags. He doesn't see that because he doesn't know or doesn't care to know, doesn't want to know, or is not interested. He doesn't see that that's what's happened. He just sees, the U.S. has successfully lured in a bunch of genius like venture capital people to make the government more efficient. I compare the govern like a startup Pat McFadden plan a bit like NEOM to the USA's Abu Dhabi or like Dubai of tech guys in government, where it's like we've looked at that. There's tech guys in government. We don't.
Are you suggesting we're trying that like colonial violence returns to the metropole and we're trying to put loafers on the ground in our own country?
I think we might be trying to get some gilets and on door kickers basically in the civil service. Because like what we always talked about, like what the point of NEOM, the thing that made it so ridiculous is that as a concept is that it was MBS looking at Dubai and saying, how can we create something that's like Dubai in Saudi, and looking at like the fact that it has unusual buildings and like lots of shopping and dining, and doesn't see that this is a place where you can just like launder money, right? This is like Middle Eastern Switzerland.
It's like cargo coal stuff. It's backwards.
Crown Prince, we're going to need a PF Chang's. We're going to need to build one that's double the size of the one in Dubai.
London is already a place where you can launder money, famously so. It's one of the things that one of the last remaining things we're good at in this country. It's just that we've reached the kind of limits of where that can take you economically.
So basically, what Pat McFadden's doing is he's, again, much like MBS looked at Dubai, he's looking at the US and saying, we have to get startup guys in, not understanding that the Department for Government Efficiency is for like a way for Elon Musk to like get rid of most of his lawsuits by making them illegal, right?
We're going to do Vision 2030 on Britain.
Yeah, finally.
At long last. Finally, we're going to control the like Sharia hardline establishment of this country and modernize a bit. WWE is coming to London.
So it says, he says, crack teams and problem solvers will be deployed to improve public services and support the delivery of the plan for change.
We're going to get robbed fucking blind off this shit. There are going to be Mercedes with every door open dumped outside every airport terminal in the country in 6 months' time.
Made up of a mix of people working in partnerships to drive change with digital and data skills, policy officials, and frontline workers. They'll be given the freedom to experiment and adapt, adopting the test and learn mindset of Silicon Valley. And they're going to say, they're going to start with family support and temporary accommodation. On temporary accommodation, we want them to begin by looking at how we can reduce costs. And on family support, they'll be looking at how family hubs can increase the number of disadvantaged families that they reach. We're not going to dictate how they do that.
It's like a bank manager being like, the money moves around the banking system very inefficiently. So what I've got in are people who are very efficient at moving banks' money around efficiently. They're wearing these ski masks, which I assume is for efficiency reasons. And I've just walked them into the vault. Yeah. I'm not going to interfere. I'm not going to second guess, because obviously like my own management hidebound perspective is going to stop me from seeing the genius of what they're doing. So, they appear to be loading the money into some kind of like souped up car. And we'll see what happens with that.
So he says, instead of writing more complicated policy papers and long strategy documents, this government will be setting teams a challenge and empowering them to experiment, innovate, and try new things.
We're going to put a slide in the Home Office.
You have to always come back to that question of, this is about reforming British British capitalism. And their plan to reform British capitalism, having imitated like successful companies as, governments, they love to, since like Blair, imitate whatever companies are successful in that era. And that created a bunch of things like, the Horizon scandal. That's also created outsourcing scandals.
But Riley,
yes,
all the companies that are successful in this era are either monopolies or scams.
Well, the government's a monopoly, and it could also become a scam.
Yeah.
Also, I'm looking forward to scam government. Like you go to pay your taxes, and they just like empty your bank account. Getting
a text from HMRC saying you have like £2.80 to pay on your taxes, and you click the link, and suddenly there's like ransomware on your computer or whatever.
Big spinning Keir Starmer head.
Yeah, the DWP has got pictures of you wearing women's underwear, and they're like, you're gonna have to pay them Bitcoin.
Yeah. So ultimately, right, this is the plan, as it always has been, is to reform British capitalism by imitating whatever the most successful according to them, private companies are doing. And if you can just grab a little bit of that magic startup juice, you'll be able to
squeeze it from the bag.
Yeah, you'll be able to make a country
squeezing startup juice into my tepid bath.
Yeah.
Like your kind of bath salts. Like if we could only put the bath bomb of innovation.
If only we had the matey liquid of efficiency that we could squirt into the bath of government.
And this is, of course, accompanied, we say, hey, what if we get like the Irish brothers who run Stripe to have a go at running the Department for Education for a while, see if they come up with anything. Yeah, that's right. This is also accompanied with a spending review where they're going to, again, make everybody compete for a smaller amount of money.
I'm also thinking that like the Stripe brothers doing it is like such a pull because like you've run out of British entrepreneurs, like who aren't tax exiles and who don't hate you for like white genocide and Clarkson.
Yeah. Dyson's with the farmers now. You fucked it with Dyson.
Dyson's with the farmers. The fucking the Weatherspoons guy, Tim Allen or whatever. He's with the farmers.
Yeah, Tim Allen.
Tim Allen.
They're all out in the country at Diddley Squat Farm with the fucking 8th Root Army. Like
Tim Martin and James Dyson have joined Jabbat Al Clarkson. So they will no longer negotiate with the British government.
So is that at the same time, right? They're saying this is going to be a tight spending envelope. So the plan is reform British capitalism by adopting the aesthetics of crack teams of startup problem solvers without any more investment than we have now.
Okay.
Yeah. I know this is my favorite thing that the British government does, right? Because they go like, oh, well, basically, we're paying a lot of money to private companies right now for all these services, which are shit. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the budget for that even further. And then we know that a private company will swoop in and say like, yeah, we'll do it for that. And then they just won't do it. Yep. So we'll go from like paying too much for something that's shit to paying like slightly less for something that's just not happening at all. But that's better somehow.
But the difference is we're going to have managers who are from the most fashionable type of private company now, or we're going to adopt the management philosophy of the most fashionable types of private company now.
Ooh.
I didn't think the 2024 version of Hire More Women Guards would be hire more gilet managers, but that seems to be where we're at.
At the same time, Rachel Reeves is bringing in private sector experts to advise on how to get the best value for money from a spending review exercise, which when I saw this written about in the Financial Times, my jaw dropped when they said that the next spending review will not be a Whitehall echo chamber. I'm determined to do things differently, and to maximize the value of every pound, the spending review will be a zero-based budget.
Zero-based? I sure hope it isn't.
That is something that, if you don't know, a zero-based budget is something that a company does when it's realized that the amount of money it's spending on like printer cartridges is having too much of an impact on like its profitability and bottom line. It's not something ordinarily that a healthy organization does.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if nothing else, you have to acknowledge that the British government is not a healthy organization. So at least we've gotten that far. But this is a bad sign if you see it in a company.
Absolutely. That's a bad sign. This spending review is basically, let's say this, if your company is doing something where it's like all of a sudden you have to bring your own pen to work, that is usually the kind of policy that follows a zero-based budgeting exercise.
Great.
Bring your pen to work day. So let him see what you get up to, you know?
So anyway, you put a marker down November earlier. I'm going to put you put more of like a mission marker down. I'm going to put a milestone down.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. And then we'll get to the foundation.
Yeah, well,
naturally.
The foundation is that British capitalism is going to be successfully reformed by the next guy. My prediction, my milestone, is that within the next 6 months, we're going to like have Kinds of Kindness 2 made only of footage from Starmer and Wahid Ali's apartment. We're going to have that.
I love that I've referenced that enough that now I've got you doing it too.
That's right.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, we're going to have that, and it's going to get like leaked to, friendly journalists at the Times by, whoever in the Labour Party decides that Starmer is now just too embarrassing because he keeps on relaunching the party, and the next person is going to bring in.
If you fuck around with the little like fiefdoms enough, if you do this zero-based audit, this extremely cringe audit, and say, I don't know, the Home Office, right, for instance, is spending way too much money on staples, and it's fucking the entire government budget. If your Home Secretary is like politically influential and wants to keep their reputation and thus their staples budget, you might find yourself at the victim of some like backstabbing.
And again, the whole belief is we just need a better manager with the right management philosophy.
And all of these people believe themselves to be a better manager. Yeah. So knives fully out.
The next manager is going to bring the management philosophy that is going to solve this impossible problem by arranging an amount of, like, I don't know, water, for example, that's too small to fill up a bucket. They're going to arrange it cleverly enough such that it fills up the bucket. It's easy as that.
Yeah, well, milestones first, then missions, then foundation.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it's more water in the bucket.
Coming into the like last 10 minutes of a chess game in which your opponent has every piece and you have one rook, a king, a Ferrero Rocher that wandered onto the board somehow, and being like, it's fine. I have the skills to manage this.
Essentially.
At a certain point, it like sort of transcends anyone's managerial skill because there's a structural issue caused by previous things that have happened.
We've eaten too many of the pieces of Ferrero Rocher checkers because they were too delicious.
I would fully, do not play Ferrero Rocher checkers against me. It's just $1 trillion idea for Ferrero, by the way, if they want to take me up on that.
Think about this. Who's the one who's going to be willing to flip the board and stop playing that game?
Fucking
the ambassador,
Big Chungus is here to stay. It's Nigel Farage. The most probable next prime minister, unless he dies in some kind of like dirigible accident.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
run over by Jeremy Clarkson in the world's longest tractor somehow in a case of misadventure.
So I want to talk about one more thing before we finish, which is I think company that I've been, let's say, bombarded with people saying, "Hey, you should talk about this." I have suffered an artillery bombardment of people sending me that Washington Post article about Sauron, the home security system company. Now,
the fact that they called it Sauron, just table stakes. These people are both like evil, but also extreme nerds.
Yeah. Talk about a fucking zero-based budget.
You have to hope that one day the working classes of the world rise up and shove these people into the lockers they belong in.
Indeed.
Yeah. I fucking, it's like Palantir as well. It's like, read another book.
Say it's like Palantir. It's all funded by the same people. Like all of these Lord of the Rings companies are all funded by Peter Thiel and his friends.
It's all indirectly Peter Thiel, and this is just a sign that Peter Thiel is getting worried that his Dracula's castle is going to get assaulted at some point.
Well, when we're all being like hauled off to the secret interrogation black sites because of information that's been posted about us on Second Breakfast.
Yeah. But also, there's a few ways to talk about this, and I'm choosing an angle that involves us talking about this article and another company that is backed also by the same VC, Kevin Hartz with a Z, who's not the star of the movie Lift. I believe it's a different guy.
No, he's many of him stacked on top of each other in a trench coat.
The Kevin Hartz vehicle Lift.
Yeah. But that's another company invested in by Kevin Hartz, who's close to the Palantir, right? And that company's called Orchid.
Why are they so fucking self-seriously like evil and sinister?
Well, we're gonna see about it.
They love doing this shit. Okay,
but
sure.
these two companies taken together, I think, are indicative of something. But let's read. This is Natasha Tiku's article in the Washington Post regarding Sauron, the home security system company. In the future, she writes, your home will feel as safe from intruders as a state-of-the-art military base.
But not very. Like a bunch of junior employees at my home are walking off the job with crates of ammunition.
It depends on where the military base is, who it's being run by, what the political situation is in the country at the time.
In the future, your home will feel as secure as a U.S. Army base in West Germany in the 80s, like filled with weed smoke.
Yeah, in the future, your home will feel as secure as was Fort Bragg, which is definitely people going in and out.
Yeah, sort of like autonomously Sauron running a like coke trafficking operation through my house.
Hey! Cameras and sensors surveil the perimeter, scanning bystanders' faces for potential threats. Drones from a deterrence pod scare off trespassers by projecting a searchlight over any suspicious movement. A virtual view of the home is rendered in 3D and updated in real time, just like Tesla's digital display. And private security agents monitor alerts from a central hub. This is the vision of home security pitched by Sauron, a Silicon Valley startup boasting a waiting list of tech CEOs and venture capitalists as customers. So first of all, right off the bat, I'm reminded of the first Purge movie. To be like, this is, you have your central home security system controlled by an iPad that allows you to wait out the chaos in safety.
I'm so glad that these people are scared, by the way. You know, I as much as I fear it's not going to last, I'm still glad for the moment, you know?
Yeah. It's quite like anti-dogging Action, isn't it? That's the thing I can see it having the biggest impact on, to be honest with you. It's just shining lights on stuff.
If you wanted to like dog in a CEO's driveway, that to me is praxis, you know? It's not the kind of praxis that I want to be too closely associated with you. But if you want to start like swinging in parked cars outside like a big pharma CEO's house, that's something, you know?
Yeah.
The weirdest form of activism.
So Hartz and co-founder Jack Abraham said they were driven to start the company after incidents in their homes in San Francisco's Presidio Terrace, an affluent gated cul-de-sac once home to politicians such as Nancy Pelosi. So we know, like, not very safe.
Yeah, no, granted, yeah.
Yeah, there's a criminal living in Nancy Pelosi's house. It's Nancy Pelosi.
The greatest danger, of course, living near Nancy Pelosi's house is if you're like walking on the street and then you just hear Paul driving behind you. Just like get taken out by him doing some like liquored up Tokyo drift shit. But
you might just get implicated in insider trading because of stuff you heard over the fence, you know?
I love the implication that Nancy does her insider trading by screaming down the phone so loudly that you can like hear it nearby.
Yeah. Yes, I already told you. I have inside.
Buy Nvidia. What did I fucking say?
Buy Nvidia. I have insider information about it. No, what are you talking about? No one can hear me. I'm in my Renault Clio.
If I didn't give insider trading tips to the Deaf Investors Federation, would I be Nancy Pelosi? That's a rhetorical question.
You know the bit in Casino where they get their wives on the phone so the FBI has to decide that the conversation isn't pertinent and turn off the recording devices? It's like the inverse of that, trying to have the most pertinent conversation you possibly can.
Hart said the security system failed to alert him and his wife when an intruder rang their doorbell and tried to enter their home late at night. So number one, home invaders ringing the doorbell? Number one.
A polite one, you know, just let people know. It's like, hey, are you busy, you know, for a home invasion?
Do you have time? Can I pencil you in?
The considerate home invader?
Well, statistics from the San Francisco PD from October show that property crime and car theft has, guess what, dropped after a brief uptick. So that whole
it's because they got rid of the woke DA, you know, so now, you know, now crime is over
But also,
again.
like, the falling crime rates since the 1970s, interrupted by a tiny blip just after COVID, guess what? They're back down again. And the homicide rate sits at a 5-year low. The data apparently has done little to appease the public's fears, which also just goes to show, right, that like, what do we talk about when we talk about like the failure of incumbent governments? It's or the failure of the economics profession as a whole. It's that, guess what? The data does little to appease the public's fears because what people want is very often not related to headline data. People don't want high economic growth. They want to have they have fuel in their car and they want to have food on their table. Just like tech CEOs don't actually care about crime rates. They want to live in a parallel universe where we don't have to acknowledge that anybody else exists other than to like in the moments where they're being directly served. We had this kind of social experiment not to prosecute criminals, and that led to open air drug markets and things of that nature, Hurt said.
Open air drug market makes it sound quite kind of nice, you know, like it's a farmer's market but for drugs. Oh, I know it's more expensive at the open air drug market, but the stuff is is so fresh. There's little clods of mud on the crack. I love it. I just, it's so nice just to get it from source.
Hart said, comparing the sense of lawlessness to New York in the 1970s. And again, I think that's important to go back to.
Yeah, in the sense that it's like a kind of a moral panic because you saw some scary like Instagram videos, but also fear of crime and crime are not really correlated in any meaningful way. And yeah, all these people also have much more reason to be scared than just like average person as well.
I mean, I wonder, they're very willing to sign up people, especially.
You have a lot of nice things and you're aware of that. And also you have some awareness maybe of the fact that like the way you got those nice things is wrong and comes at the expense of the people who are maybe like using the open air drug market.
And I think it was inevitable that like something would happen, that CEOs would start hiring personal protective details, which, guess what? LinkedIn's flooded with jobs for like for paying ex-military guys $400,000.
I've been applying for all of them. I've been willing to falsify any number of military records.
You got the medals to back it up. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. I was a colonel of the Greek Air Force.
I was a colonel of the Greek Air Force. I was the only Ottoman Janissary to also be a colonel in the Greek Air Force. You gotta let me be. Andy Jassy of Amazon.
CV like a minor British royal. Yeah, I was an Ottoman Janissary. I was a colonel in the Greek Air Force.
Every war,
I'm a prince
sides.
of Andorra, and I was in the Waffen SS. Anyway,
I didn't know she was Canadian. Anyway,
Canadian Ukrainian.
Yeah, so it was inevitable that something would happen that would lead to rapid upticks in desire for security among tech executives. They talked about it for a long time. They love to sit down at dinner and think about like, okay, when do you shoot the pilot of the plane when you get to your farm in New Zealand?
Yeah, what kind of bomb collar can I put on these like mercenaries to make them not betray me?
Yeah, and that's all quite like like fanciful, thinking big, expressing fears but not acting. And there's been more and more acting, and there are more and more of them are going to get more and more secretive and live like I'd say like more and more separated lives from the rest of us, right? And it says in Silicon Valley circles, the article says, these fears have inspired entrepreneurs to reframe commercial tech tools such as drones and facial recognition technology as a solution to safety woes for individuals. They've raised $18 million in funding from the executives behind Flock Safety, which we've discussed, Palantir, obviously, and some of the backing also comes from Hart's firm. So let's shift focus now to Orchid. So typically, embryo pre-implementation testing scans for only alarming abnormalities, and then a doctor selects the nicest looker. This is not that. This is an interview with the CEO of Orchid in Wired, again, sponsored by the same VC firm. This is something that Noor Siddiqui, CEO, tells me, quote, has been on society's mind and sci-fi's mind for a generation. A first-of-its-kind picture of every baby-to-be's genetic destiny. Right now...
Oh, great. They're going to do eugenics again. Cool.
Yeah.
This one's going to be a podcaster. Abort.
Aborted podcaster daughter. Yeah. I would have loved recording podcasts.
Yeah.
I could have done so many riffs with you, Anon.
I would have faved your reply, Anon. Yeah. we could have hung out after the show, and I could have said, thank you for listening, Anon.
I would have laughed at your a sadist ophthalmologist joke, Anon.
So right now, Orchid calculates each embryo's likelihood of one day suffering from any number of more than like 1,200 diseases and conditions, and so on and so on. Still in its early days, $12 billion in funding, but with 40 IVF clinics across the country, they have thousands of customers, including, again, several big name figures in tech. Noor Siddiqui says.
It's like so cool that tech CEOs can like select for the traits of the kids that aren't going to talk to them in 20 years.
Well, we now live in a world where every baby can be genetically blessed. Health doesn't have to be a random genetic lottery at birth, but with a cost of like $2,500 American dollars per embryo and screening, and a single round of IVF involving potentially dozens of embryos, this is of course again a sort of a promise for the rich that it's like, hey, you can do eugenics to yourself at like the embryo phase as a class, and then you can also hide behind these giant walls as a class with your deterrence drones.
Deterrence drones to. I also picked up on that. You can have all these deterrence drones to protect my genetically different kid.
Yeah. Like at what point do you see is like, oh, well, this is the anxieties of the ultra wealthy, the people who are like some of the few people who are like really actually profiting from the current situation are such that they're basically trying to hive themselves off, as they've been doing for a while, right? This is just hammering the accelerator, trying to hive themselves off into a different reality.
Yeah, it's nothing new. It's just like Galt's Gulch rather. It's like Ayn Rand shit. It's like wealth separatism, and it didn't work then. It's not going to work now. And I hope bad stuff continues to happen to more of them.
Solving my disloyal mercenary problem by selecting embryos and breeding my army of genetically massive adult sons.
Yeah, well,
like every son I have is going to be like the giant of fucking Kandahar, and then no one's going to come on my New Zealand farm.
I fear Donald Trump may already have done this, but only for Barron. That kid's like 7 feet tall and still growing. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Scout that child for the NBA immediately.
Yeah. And I mean, look, you can get quite fanciful, and you can even say, okay, well, you know, if you are going to be a law unto yourself behind your living in your fortress, you know, and what is your dream is to live forever and to control your offspring, to control your environment, to control the environment around your environment. It is yet another extension of control. But what I think was very funny about this, the amusing thing about Orchid, is that Noor-Siddiqui, he says that, you know, they only need about 5 picograms per cell in an embryo sample, which is a really, really tiny amount, more tiny than than current screening.
Did she say this in a weirdly deep voice while wearing a black turtleneck?
Hold the phone. From both a chemistry and a computational perspective, we had to invent new things to make it so that you can recover the whole genome data. The interviewer then says, the absolute whole thing, all not 3 billion bases or whatever, to which she says 99.6% coverage on average. The interviewer says, I must now ask a question I've been dreading, and I'm sorry in advance, so here goes. It's the inevitable question about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, to which Noor-Siddiqui says, that is such a mean question to ask.
Aw, my feelings.
Yeah.
Aw.
I like how it's uncivil to be like, hey, does this shit work?
Yeah, well, no, she of course, if I were the interviewer, I would have anticipated that if I made a direct comparison to Elizabeth Holmes, she would have said, hey, it's sexist to compare me to Elizabeth Holmes just because I'm another young female tech founder, as opposed to being like, hey, you're saying you invented a bunch of new technologies, you're not explaining how it works to do a basically impossible thing that a lot of very rich people want. Are you sure that you've done that? But nevertheless.
Damn interviewer, your parents should have done embryo analysis on you to find out that you were going to turn into a snake. I trusted you, dog.
What unites these two companies, in addition to their support from the Thiel Fund and Kevin Hart, is that they share a rapidly growing preoccupation with the utter stratification of the rich in worlds entirely apart from the rest of us, and basically part of this new Gilded Age. These are things that like Rockefeller would have done if he had the capability to do so. I think it's also important to remember that the thing that brought an end to the Gilded Age wasn't just time. It was like several panics and depressions, several world wars. It started with depressions in the late 19th century, 20 years of attempts and failures at progressive reform throughout the early 20th century. It really only ended with the capital destruction of the Great Depression, the New Deal, and the Second World War. That involved a tremendous upheaval. That's what brought the last Gilded Age basically to an end and ushered in what apparently was like the 30 unusual, exceptional years of like rising living standards for some chosen insiders. Back to the article about Sauron. Sauron is targeting homeowners at the high end of the real estate market, beginning with a private event during
they're not the only ones.
During Art Basel, Miami Beach.
Uniquely fucked vibe there.
Yeah. Our target market of fat guy on boat with Instagram models will surely be signing up.
So Hart said his motivation to move into home security was watching progress speed ahead in areas such as self-driving cars, debatable, while once promising visions of domestic life such as the smart home languish. Big tech companies haven't deployed tools such as facial recognition as aggressively as Hartz would like. And Hartz is also imagining more aggressive countermeasures, saying, what about a machine that could take out a bad actor with a bullet or something?
This was the bit of the article that really made me like laugh out loud while reading, because I'm just like, yeah, cool, man. I want the fucking CCTV camera that also has a Glock and can just like shoot people that it thinks are suspicious. I mean, just like taking out the every guy the one time he actually finds my house.
Yeah. I mean, that is, of course, the dream, right? That's the dream is why can't castle doctrine be automated? You know, why can't it be, potentially lethal to go in my home? Because guess what? The people who will be shot by accident, they don't really matter, right?
Yeah. Well, I also like how much these people are clearly just riffing, like the way it's just like, I don't know, why couldn't the security camera just like shoot a guy for you or something? I don't know. I've not really thought about it. I just invest in my fucking company. Put the money in my company that obviously won't work, so then I can sell to some other idiot, and then eventually the company will fail. fail, but I'll be worth $10 million and I'll get to be on another company, because that's how it works.
Well, it's either that or, of course, it's, hey, let's just all adjust to the reality that, some people's houses have deterrence pods on them because they're scared of everyone. And because they're scared of everyone, because they rightly so, because they understand that an increasingly brittle state stands between, their hoarded wealth and everybody else's, meal, essentially. We've gone a little long, so I'm going to end it there. And I'm going to say thank you to my co-host for being here. Thank you to you for listening. And a reminder, as ever, we have a Patreon. It is the second episode every single solitary week.
That's right. Every single decade, a new episode.
Yes, every decade, a bonus episode. And you can find that on Patreon. It's $5 a month. There's some good stuff there.
Yeah.
You also, if you sign up, can send us questions. We will ask them. There is a Google form now. So think of some questions and then ask them to us, your pals.
Yeah, we will A your cues.
Finally, your cues aid by us.
Yeah, that's right. We will Assad your, I don't know what Q would stand for. Send them in.
Send them in. All right. So we will see you on the bonus episode in a few short days. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Also, Brussels and fucking Rotterdam on sale on my website. But if you're in those cities, buy the tickets. Amsterdam on sale soon.
Okay, bye for real now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Go.